Shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Hi guys, it's ASBYT and welcome back to a brand new video. Now the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 and 10 Plus were both launched in New York about 3 weeks ago now, and I was there for it. At the time, I gave you my first impressions. Now I've been using it on and off much more in the time since, so it's time to share with you my findings. If you are indeed looking to possibly buy this device, you want to know what's good, what's possibly not so good and could be improved, and pretty much exactly what you're getting for your money. So this is my full review, the pros, the cons, the truth. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. Right, so the first thing I want to touch on is the build quality. How well has it lasted in the time I've had it? Because often you get a new device, it looks amazing, but after you use it for a little bit, you start getting quite a lot of damage. Well, I can happily say I've had pretty much nothing of note. A couple of scratches here and there to the pre-installed screen protector, but the buttons are still working as advertised. The S Pen, I've had no problems with that mechanic, no scratches or cracks on the rear, and I haven't worn a case, and I have been lumping it in and out of bags, in and out of pockets, and as far as I can see, no scratches. Now I'm going to jump onto camera, and this is an area that will always cause controversy because camera quality is incredibly subjective. What might look good to me might not look good to you, and vice versa. Now straight from the start, if you've been under a rock and know nothing about the camera arrangement on the Note 10 Plus, it is fairly similar to what we've seen on the S10 Plus. 3 main lenses in the camera setup and a time of flight sensor as well, good for portrait, bokeh shots, etc. Now the wide angle lens that is included on the Note 10 Plus is probably my favourite wide angle lens on a smartphone camera right now. Beating off competition from the likes of the Huawei P30 Pro, the OnePlus 7 Pro, it's my go-to wide angle lens. You've also got the 2x telephoto lens, which could be better. We've seen other manufacturers go to 3x and 5x optical zoom, and those hybrid zooms that go right up to 50x, for example. The hybrid zoom on here goes to 10x. Having said that, while I think having those features is great, I personally don't really use zoom lenses that much. So again, that might come down to personal preference. I find having a great wide angle lens better than having a great zoom lens. You might be the other way around, and that is the beauty of it. It's also got a really stellar 12 megapixel primary sensor, and while it does take objectively great photos, very sharp, vivid, nice color temperatures, there's one feature on the Note 10 Plus camera which I don't like and feel it could be improved, and that is, as far as I can see, the shutter speed when you're taking a photo. So if you're taking a lot of pictures of moving targets, animals, pets, your family members for example, and there's action and running and movement involved, I still find I get a lot of blurred photos on here, so its point and shoot nature is not quite as good as say the Pixel 3 for example, which still takes the best movement portrait photos. For that reason, you press to take the photo, it's instant, whereas with the Note 10 Plus I find there is a slight delay, and it's nothing new on the Note 10 Plus. It's exactly the same with the S10 Plus, exactly the same with the Note 9, and that's certainly an area that I'm just willing them to improve. The night mode has had software updates, but it's still not industry leading when you compare it to the Huawei P30 Pro for example. A good night mode, not a great one. Some would say it's slightly more natural than the more artificial looking Huawei P30 Pro. Again, it's subjective. Now, a couple of new big features with the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus come in the form of video, which, to cut a long story short, the video capture quality on here is brilliant. If you want a smartphone for vlogging and just general video amusement, super slow-mo for example, 4K at 60 frames a second on the rear, 4K at 30 on the front, still industry leading. But yeah, those two big new features. Number one, live focus video, which in layman's terms means the subject is in really sharp focus and the background is nice and blurred. When it's done well, it comes across as really cinematic. When it's not done well, it makes you look like you're shooting video on a potato. And it does this using software, giving the illusion of a nice depth of field, which is a bit spotty currently right now. I did mention this in a couple of my kind of first impressions videos, but what I have noticed is if you are stationary and you don't have too much going on in the background, it does appear to work much better than if you have a lot of background movement and changing of light, for example. I still feel it could be improved with firmware updates, but that is something I have noticed over the last few weeks. Try and make sure there's as little going on behind you as possible in fairly good lighting, and you shouldn't have too many problems. If you do the opposite, the glitchy nature to that software bokeh blur can be a little bit offensive. The other main new technology comes in the form of super steady video capture. Now, while I haven't tested this in a great amount of detail on those occasions that I have, it seems to be pretty brilliant. I think for a lot of people that have used gimbals, for example, with their smartphones, will no longer need to do that. Certainly something that I will continue to test as we move forwards. One more feature which I've forgotten with video is Samsung's audio focus feature, which in layman's terms means if you zoom in on video to a specific area of the shot, if there's sound coming from that specific area, it's meant to enhance that specific sound. Next, I want to touch on battery life, and this is an area that a lot of serial note users that have been buying the product over the years are desperate to have. It's a powerhouse device, and therefore it needs a better battery. 4300 mAh, and it's got to a stage where I no longer have to worry about getting through a day. For obvious reasons, with my job, I am on my phone a lot throughout the day, so battery life is a big thing for me, and I don't worry. I don't have to charge it midway through the day, and because of its new fast charging technology, I don't even often charge it at night time. Overnight, for example, I'll often get up in the morning, realise the phone's on about 20% or so, whack it on charge for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then I'm good to go for the day. If you're going from a completely flat battery with the charger that comes in the retail box, which we'll get to, it'll take just over an hour with the display off. If the display is on, it'll be around an hour and 25 minutes. Now, I said the charger that comes in the retail box because that is 25 watts. The actual advertised 45 watts fast charging that you can get with the Note 10 Plus is only available if you actually buy an additional 45 watt charger. Now, I personally feel the amount of money you're spending on a Galaxy Note 10 Plus, they should include the 45 watts in the box and not 25. I'll give them the same slap that I gave Apple for their one last year. Outside of that, the new technology works great and it does charge pretty quick with that 25 watt charge. Now, one more thing on battery life, it will of course vary depending on what region you're from, where you've got your device, and whether it has the in-house Exynos 9825 SoC or whether it has the Snapdragon 855. Now, traditionally, the Snapdragon variants of the Samsung devices have always been better for battery life than poor us in the UK, the rest of Europe, for example, that have the Exynos versions. Now, I can say the Exynos 9825 has been a welcome addition from the 9820, which we saw on the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. It does have better energy efficiency due to that new 7nm SoC from the 8 that we saw again on the S10 Plus. And while it's not night and day, and while I feel the Snapdragon variant will still probably give you better battery life, it does a pretty decent job. Now, we've touched on the SoC, and that combined with the 12GB of RAM that I have here, 256GB of storage, I can't think of any problems that I've had. Now, I know some people say that after a bit of use, Samsung devices can tend to slow down a little bit. I can only go off what I've experienced in these opening few weeks, but I'm guessing all what I've mentioned, plus the jump by Samsung to One UI, the new skin over the top of Android 9 Pie currently, I think for those doubters out there, you might be pleasantly surprised. I've stated from pretty much day one of testing One UI, it's one of my favourite skins. Up there with probably Oxygen OS from OnePlus. It's really easy to use, it's much closer to stock Android than it used to be. And yes, there is still a bit of Samsung bloatware, but you can customise it. A lot of it you don't actually have to have running in the background. So yeah, good job. Now we're going to talk about the stereo speakers that we do have on the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, and this is an area that again Samsung tend to excel pretty well in. Now, one thing to point out, we don't have front-firing speakers, so if they're important to you, then don't get the Note 10 Plus. They are top and bottom firing, very rich and loud sound, so even though I do generally use earphones or headphones when I'm listening to music or viewing media on my device, if for any reason I can't for that moment in time, the speakers do a very good job. The Quad HD Plus display is amazing. It's bright, vivid, wonderful colours. Viewing media, gaming, anything on this device is absolutely brilliant, apart from one thing, the 60Hz refresh rate. Now, while I feel this sort of higher hertz trend in smartphone displays has been a little bit over-talked. You honestly, if you have the two devices next to each other, you can notice the difference between a 60Hz, a 90 and a 120. And while I'm using it, I don't go, oh, this isn't very good. But if I switch back to the OnePlus 7 Pro, for example, I can tell the difference. And then on top of that, you've got the likes of the Asus ROG Phone 2, which has a 120Hz AMOLED display. And I just feel that considering the Samsung Note 10 Plus is meant to be the behemoth, the be-all and end-all that the Note phones generally are every single year, I think they should have upped the refresh rate on the Plus model. The fact that Samsung make pretty much nearly all displays for many different manufacturers, including the OnePlus 7 Pro, I don't know why they didn't do it for their own device. Wouldn't stop me buying the phone. Feel they should have put it in there. Another thing I think they should have put in there is the headphone jack, and I don't use wired headphones. I am a wireless person. I think 70% of the general public use wireless headphones or earphones according to most surveys, but the fact that there's about 30% of the market that are desperate for wired headphones on a device, again, that is meant to be the everything feature phone, yeah, I just think it should have been there. I love using the S Pen on this device. Very handy for taking notes, taking photos. For example, the Air Actions, which is the new gesture system on here. Like I said in my first impressions, I think gestures are a bit of a gimmick. I haven't really used it that much. One thing I have used them for is changing between different camera modes if I'm taking photos or videos, for example, and the phone is out of reach. That's an area that has worked, but outside of that, I wouldn't use it to change tracks, raise and lower volume, for example, on my device. But I'm sure some of you will. Now, one thing I always mention is the actual size of a device. In case hearing or seeing the specs doesn't really help you, it's a big device. We know that, but I generally do like fairly big phones. I feel it's slightly too big. I think my perfect size is around 6.4 inches. So being 6.8 is a little bit big. It's still comfortable, but it is boxy, so it's not quite as comfortable as the S10 Plus, for example, in the hand, which is marginally smaller as well. And one thing I have noticed is, even though it's not a really heavy device, if you are holding it in one hand for quite a while, it does get pretty achy. I have to rest it on my little pinky finger there, and it does get a little bit achy after a time of long use. So it is really, for me, with small hands, a two-handed phone. You know that going in, it's not a negative, it's just something I thought you might want to know. Another feature about this device that I haven't really used is the Dect Compatibility, but again, it's a feature that's there and a lot of people do find it very useful so that you can not only have a phone, but you can also kind of have a portable computer setup. It's another really great feature, and if you do want to see more content on Dects, let me know in the comment section below and I will probably do a sole video on that and all the features and what you can do and how it might benefit you. Now, a lot of people have noticed that I've got the Plus model and this is the 5G variant, and some people have asked, what about the standard Note 10? And my sole feeling on the standard Note 10 is, if you love the design of the Note 10 and you love the smaller size, then great. But literally outside of that, I wouldn't recommend getting that phone. I would always recommend getting the Plus model. There are far more features for not a massive amount of extra money, and that is the problem I feel with the standard Note 10. If they brought the standard Note 10 out at £600, then they could have really been on to a winner. I think they priced it far too high because they wanted most people to go with the Plus model, and therefore if they wanted people to go with the Plus model, just create one device. That's the way I see it anyway. Now, before I let you go, I've got two questions which I want to ask you, and I want you to let me know in the comment section below. Number one, is the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus the best smartphone all round currently right now? And number two, is it worth the £1,000+ dollars price range? Now, on to today's video sponsor, Squarespace. They give you a really powerful online platform for you to create your own website. You can choose from absolutely tons of designer and award-winning templates, so you don't have to go through the painstaking task of creating your own website from the ground up. And one great thing about these templates is that they're made with modern browser and mobile apps in mind. One particularly great feature that I like is that Squarespace actually allows you to link your various social media accounts to your website so that you can post simultaneously to all accounts and you don't have to do each one individually. That frees up so much time. Also, you can use their mobile app, which means managing your blogs and your comments, etc. is really, really easy. There is a completely free trial with no credit cards required, and if you like what you see, there's also a 10% discount code in the video description below, squarespace.com/ ASBYT, free trial, and a 10% off your first purchase. All in all, if you're looking for a website builder, then Squarespace is a fantastic option. As always, this video did take quite a long time to make, so if you did enjoy it and found it helpful, smash that like button for me, subscribe and hit that notification bell if you're new and want to be notified every time that I post a video here on YouTube. Tech news, unboxings, reviews. I love you and leave you. I'll see you in the next one. So ASBYT, peace out.